And Rick Stanton's short film stars his brother, who is actually autistic, and is quite an interesting film. Got some interesting people in it, like Wunmi Mosaku, who people who know from Loki and Deadpool and Wolverine. So, yeah, it's an interesting film. So joining us in the studio is our first guest this morning, Rick Stanton, director and DOP and all sorts. How are you doing this morning, Rick?
I'm very, very well, Steve. How are you doing?
It's good to talk to you this morning. It's a very interesting film you've made, so I'm very excited to talk to you about that. So this new film of yours is called Spectrum, which deals with the main character who's on the autistic spectrum. But before we get into that, could you tell us a little bit of background?
I grew up in East London, Plaistow, East London, from a very working class family, a huge family. My mum was one of 9, so I've got about 50 cousins or something. My dad, I guess, was the closest person I had met in show business because he used to work in a porno warehouse, just stacking mags and VHS, but that was the closest sort of glamour I had in my childhood, if you like. And then growing up, I always just loved film. Like, my dad showed me Pulp Fiction when I was about 9, which is probably quite bad parenting, but I remember very vividly where he said, if you like this, you should watch Reservoir Dogs, which we did the following night. And then from there, I kind of very early on started watching all the sort of 70s movies of Scorsese and De Palma and etc. And it just sort of grew and grew from there, really. I left school at 16, but I never went to college or uni or anything. And I think one of the reasons was because I don't think I had ever met anybody who had ever been to uni or college other than the GP or the actual teachers in school. So I just felt like, looking back now anyway, I think it's something that I just thought wasn't for me, it just wasn't something that I just see it as other people did that type thing. So I never went to film school or anything like that. And then from there, I sort of fell into music by the sort of indie music scene of around 2006 sort of time. And I got to know people within that sort of music scene, like some of the bands around like Baby Shambles and stuff like that. And then from there, a friend of mine I used to run some nights with, like indie nights in Camden, he started to manage a musician called Alex Clare, who signed to Universal. And then with that, I just started filming him on tour and in the studio and stuff, just because I had a camera and I had an interest in it, mainly because I'd actually taught myself to edit when I was like 15, making like kung fu videos and like jackass skate videos and that with my cousins and stuff. So because I had that sort of self-educated knowledge, I just started filming my mate for fun, really, like in the studio and stuff, like I said. And then he just sort of rolled on from there. So from that, I started to film Amy Winehouse's dad, Mitch Winehouse, because Amy actually gave Mitch as a Christmas present to record an album. So with that, his manager wanted someone to go and film some gigs and stuff. And then from that, it just rolled on and rolled on. And then when Amy passed away, I started to do lots of stuff for the Amy Foundation. And then it just sort of carried on from there, really. Kind of fell into a career just by chance, which I think a lot of people do. You sort of go along the path and then the forks in the road come, and then depends which opportunities you takes you somewhere else. And then from that, it's expanded into like lots of branded content, like commercial sort of stuff. I've done a lot of stuff for like Virgin Atlantic, Puma, Apple, Amazon. And then I've also always tinkered with doing like some short film work. So this Spectrum is my 3rd short now. I did 2 previously, which were a lot smaller projects. The others were sort of 8 minutes long. This one is a 30-minute drama. And yeah, I'm just sort of trying to step into that world, really, to become a like working TV drama and film drama director. And this is one of the reasons I made the film, was to sort of try and make that step into that world, really.
How did you find the difference between learning pretty much on the job and from your love of cinema, like learning the language of cinema through viewing and all the rest of it, compared to people who have maybe gone through university and done a film course?
I think it is a very different experience in terms of when you're learning on the job, because the jobs I've done in video are very varied. So like one day I might film a musician, a rapper, say, And then the next day I might film like a Michelin star chef. So to sort of work with those two different people on separate days has taught me a lot how to sort of work with people. So like to learn to work with actors is working with people, right? So you just sort of, I've learned how to sort of deal with different types of people to get the best out of them. So I think I've learned that as one skill. And also in terms of like how to cover a scene. So like I used to shoot a lot of like events, for example. But with that, you need a lot of footage to make a good video. Do you know what I mean? So then you learn about coverage. I would say that when people ask me like, how should you learn how to make a film? I always say just learn how to edit, because then even if you're editing other people's work, you learn what they missed, because then you can go like, oh, they need to get enough coverage on this scene. If only they got a wide shot here or a close up on this, and then we could have built the scene in a different way. And I think I learned sort of by sort of mistakes, really, figuring out things as I go along, because then you can put it into your own work to make it benefit you.
Yeah, from a technical point of view, I mean, obviously growing up in Plasto, and I mean, I know from your bio you've got a very large family, and this. Were there people on hand who had equipment you could try, or what opportunities did you have?
So as a kid, as like a 15-year-old, like I said, when I taught myself to edit, I just bought a VHS camera from Cash Converter, like a Digi-8 camera. And then, like I said, we just literally, me and my cousin were just making like fun, like this was sort of time when The Matrix was huge and Kill Bill and some sort of kung fu movies. So we used to just like make kung fu movies in the garden, got really into like watching like some Bruce Lee movies and stuff like that. That was the first sort of experience of trying to piece together a scene, if you like. And then what happened was when I did the Mitch Winehouse stuff, I didn't own a camera. The manager just had like a Handycam Sony camera to film his kids on holiday or whatever. So then he just let me use that for a while. And then after a certain point, when it came apparent, like, oh, okay, maybe this is going to turn into a job for me, I then bought a Canon 7D. I remember buying that camera, and I'd already booked a job to go and do V Festival, but the camera hadn't arrived yet. So I was panicked. And then it literally arrived on the morning to go to V. But I had to learn how to use it on the way to the festival. I literally picked it up from the post office and then went to the festival. I literally was like in the car, like opening the box, testing. I never used it before. So I was like, okay, how do I use this camera? Because I never used the like SLR before. So then I just sort of picked it up and then got to the festival and just started shooting straight away. So I've always been very comfortable with like the tech side of things. And I've always enjoyed that part of it as well, you know, like figuring stuff out is sort of half the fun, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like, you know, if someone's going to take something away from that, it's that no matter what equipment you have, it's about the storytelling, it's about the planning, it's about the, you know, what you're actually going to shoot.
Well, even more today than ever before, because like an iPhone now is unbelievable. Like I've shot stuff, commercial stuff, where I'm shooting on like a Blackmagic camera, for example, and then I'll add a shot from an iPhone and the client doesn't have a clue. They have no reference point of it looks different, you know, because as long as you know how to use the camera and you know how to grade it properly, then, and if it's telling the story, then no one takes much notice, you know? So I think the tech side should never sort of hold anybody back, because there's no excuse in that area, I don't think.
I mean, this is going a little bit into a niche bit, but how do you find stuff shot on iPhones and things like that? Because of obviously the depth of field isn't there compared to, say, a film camera. It gives it a different look. How do you find that mixing and matching?
It does give it a different look, but it depends how you use it. For example, the shot that I was talking about that I used it for was like a really wide shot, so it'll be sort of open anyway. So you can get away with it for sort of stuff like that. And also I've done some tests actually with my Blackmagic camera as like an interview setup, say. And then to add the depth of field, you can fake it in like DaVinci by doing like a depth map, and then you track the person, so it sort of rotoscopes the person out, and then you can just blur the background as much as you want. So it's essentially you can choose your aperture after. And then I did a test with the two cameras and then showed somebody and said, what are you looking at here? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, there's no difference. That's just the same. You wouldn't think about it. So to use it as especially for like a B camera, you can definitely.
Is that massively time consuming though, getting DaVinci to rotoscope it?
Not massively, because once you've got your edit sorted, let's just say if you made a 1 minute film, do you know what I mean? You probably got 30 shots, let's say, maybe less. So you just have to use the tools that are available to you, and then you can, but there's ways to make it seemingly look as good as anything else. I think the fact that now, if you go on YouTube and type in Ari versus iPhone, they'll have comparisons, and the fact that you can even have that comparison shows how good it is.
Yes, yeah. I mean, before it would be like VHS to whatever, it would be a ludicrous comparison. So definitely things have moved on, and there's access to technology like there never was before.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you can find £1,000, you can get yourself a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and that is what we shot Spectrum on, actually. So,
well, moving on to Spectrum, obviously, as you were saying, it's a 30-minute short. Was it always going to be 30 minutes? Because obviously for a short, that's a long...
Yes. So basically, I couldn't explain why it sort of came about. So essentially, I was up for a Channel 4 scheme that they've done for the last sort of 4 years called 4 Stories. And it's a series called, the series is actually called On the Edge. And how the scheme works is they select 3 writers who have not got a TV or film credit. It's like a competition. They submit their work, and then they choose 3 scripts. And then from that, they choose 3 directors who also don't have film or TV credits to direct one of those scripts each. And essentially, I think they had 700 submissions the year that I went for it. And then they whittled it down. And then basically, I got to the final round where I went in. I had the scripts with me that I could choose one to pitch on. I went into Channel 4 and pitched to the producers my idea of the interpretation of the script that they were going for. I thought it went really, really well. I was really excited about it. And then unfortunately they went with someone else, which is, it's part of the deal. And then after that, it got me thinking, like, I learned so much from that process of writing like a 30-page treatment and really absorbing myself in somebody else's work that I was thinking, like, okay, why did they not choose me? What is the reason why possibly? So then I thought, okay, the films I'd done previously, they don't have too much naturalistic dialogue. So I thought, okay, that could be a reason why they didn't select me. So I was like, okay, let me make another film with a more dialogue heavy movie. So then I got thinking about, okay, what's the story I'm going to tell? Obviously, that's the hardest part to start with. And basically, there was an incident that happened to me when I was probably about 15 years ago. I was walking home from a pub at like 2 a.m. with my cousin, and then we could hear like shouting and screaming from somebody. And we run towards it, and then basically this woman in the street had been attacked. And as we approached, a guy jumped in a Range Rover and drove off. And then with the woman, she had all blood on her face, and me and my cousin was trying to console her and trying to help her. And at that moment, the police came and then grabbed us and put us on the floor in handcuffs because they assumed that we was part of the incident. And then very fortunately, a lady from a tower block came down and said, oh, I'm the one who called the police. These guys have got nothing to do with it. These guys are helping me. So I was like, okay, let's start from there. And how can I put that sort of real life incident into a film? Then I started to think, like, what if this happened to my brother who has autism? And so then I started to work from the beginning, was like, okay, if I tell an autism story sort of about being overlooked, which leads to this big event, how would that play out? And then that's how I sort of started. But it was always planned to be at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes because I wanted to sort of prove to myself that I had like the chops to have done the Channel 4 thing. So I wanted to be sort of make my version of one of those Channel 4 episodes to be like, look, I can do this if I'm given the opportunity, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say the length is not a problem watching Spectrum. I mean, it's actually, I have to say, when it got to the end, I was like, oh, I'm at 30 minutes. Like, it didn't seem a problem because sometimes you get shorts and, I know from, I helped judge Tweetfest Short Film Festival, that you get 10-minute shorts where you're like, after 2 minutes, you're like, oh, this is dragging. Like, what is this? Didn't get any of that with Spectrum. So definitely that's
the perfect compliment that we want, really, because there is that thing within, especially submitting to festivals, which is understandable that to try and submit a film that's half an hour is taking probably half the time that these short films will be shown, which is obviously a festival is always going to want to show as many films as possible to give as many people that platform as possible, which is obviously difficult now because submitting the film, there's a lot less chance of it being seen in a festival, which is why we decided to sort of go down the online route to give more opportunity for it to be watched like that.
I mean, there's also, I mean, I know from looking at the list of things that I've got to judge, the list is huge, and you're just like, that's a lot of time. You know, so it's like a 30-minute thing. You're thinking, oh, you know, that could be 3 or 4 things I could otherwise look at. So there is always that thing. But it's very interesting with the, as you're saying, the naturalistic dialogue, because a lot of your actors are not actors, if you see what I mean. They're untrained. But that was obviously a specific choice for the naturalistic dialogue.
Yeah, 100%. So basically, I put myself in a weird position where I wrote the film within over a sort of course of a week or so. And then I got excited about making the film. I hadn't actually spoke to my brother Steve yet to see if he'd want to be in the film, because he's not an actor. He's just, do you know what I mean? He's just a guy. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of under pressure now for myself to be like, Steve, do you want to do this film? Because if he just said no, we just wouldn't have made the film, because I would have never wanted to cast like an actor as a autistic person. But one, I don't feel an actor could ever portray it to do it justice. And two, one of the reasons we wanted to work with non-actors and especially people on the spectrum was because, as an example, we never gave the script to any of the non-actors. They never read any of the script, not a page, because I didn't want that pressure on them to be like, oh, this is the line of dialogue, I need to land this dialogue. Because for myself, if you told me to just read a line of dialogue, I would stumble with that. If you just say, put this in your own words, then it's easier, you know, it's more fluid. So, and because with Steve, I knew that would be the case, that's the way we approached it. So the way it would work is, just as an example, say if the scene was Steve and his friend talking about, Steve's friend is trying to persuade Steve that he should wear a suit for a job interview, right? That was the premise of the scene, and that's all we went there with. And it's like, okay, you guys are playing PlayStation. Carl, the point of the scene is to tell Steve to wear a suit for the job interview, right? And then because I've known Carl, Steve's friend, for like 15 years, I know how he speaks and how he would get around sort of approaching that. So then that's where you get the real golden nuggets of dialogue. It's because it's all from them. Do you know what I mean? So, and that was always the sort of approach that we wanted, because I knew that would be the case. By letting them freely give their own personality, we'll get better dialogue than what I could write.
I mean, definitely in that scene, I mean, there are some brilliant lines in that scene. I mean, his whole thing about the suit is fantastic. And there is one section of that where I'm just like, that line's brilliant. Like, and it is something Carl says, you know, and it's just like, I guess you would never be able to write it.
I know what you're referring to. It's when he's talking about Catwoman wouldn't be taken seriously if she was wearing her street clothes, because they would just think she's a librarian.
Yeah, yeah.
And that dialogue is because Carl and Steve are both really, really into comic books. So when Carl said that line, I actually started laughing, thinking it was just a funny throwaway line. But because Carl was just so literal, I was like, oh, where'd you get that from, Carl? And he's like, no, because Catwoman is a librarian. That's her day job. But I didn't know that. It's just because he's into superheroes, he tells it how it is, you know, and that's where the beauty comes from.
Putting superheroes into the story and having that as a theme that runs through, was that something you wanted to put in, or is that something that is just with the characters, you know, Steve and Carl themselves? Because autistic people do tend to like superheroes and things like that. Is that something you were very conscious of putting that in?
100%. So people always in like the autistic community always refer to like autism being a superpower. So with that, I wanted to sort of play on that, that autism is a superpower because of the way you see life. And with that, we leaned into Steve and his friend's strengths because of those reference points, like I just said with Carl and the Catwoman story. We knew we was going to get that authenticity from them and that sort of knowledge from them. Like, I was always sort of see it as a bit like in, you remember the film Clerks, the Kevin Smith film, in that they always just talk about superheroes all the time because that's what their interest is, right? And that's the same with Steve and Carl. They would just be talking about a video game or superhero new movie coming out. And that's how they communicate anyway. And that's how they sort of reference life, is through these stories. So because I knew we could lean into that, it was a great opportunity to work within that world of showing autism as a superpower out with the reference points of it, which also was a great luck with like casting Wunmi Mosaku as well, because she is in that Marvel universe. She's in Loki, she's in Deadpool and Wolverine. It's like a really nice tie-in that our little superhero movie also feels now connected to the big superhero movie, you know, which is a really amazing thing.
I mean, how did that come about? Because that does seem a bit of a coup.
Yeah, so it's just kind of blind luck, really. So I've known Wunmi for about 15 years. We've been friends and we've never worked together before. And she actually lives in LA now with her husband and her daughter. But when I was just prepping that scene, so it's like a sort of autism support group, and she plays like a sort of social worker. With that scene, when we were preparing it, I was like, okay, yeah, we've got all the cast ready. We're just going to try and find a location. I was literally going to pull it out on like Spotlight or whatever to try and find an actor to play that role. And then I found out, Wunmi's actually back in England for like a couple of weeks because I think she had like a job to do, or she was doing some press or whatever it was. So I just texted her and was like, look, I've been making this film. There's one scene that I just need you probably for like an hour. Would you be up for doing it? So she said, send me the scene. And then she came out and said, yeah, let's do it. So I got, you know what I mean? It just landed at the right time.
Yeah, it's quite good as well, because it's like, obviously she's the link almost like with the audience and then their world, because sometimes it's difficult to tell who's the trained actor and who's not a trained actor.
Yeah.
But also will be a touchstone for people because it's like, she's a known thing. So
yeah, it's very fortunate because she's in sort of within the first minute of the film. So if people do start watching, it's like, okay, this has got some credibility straight away. Where she and she sets up the film. I don't know if you noticed, but in the film, no one ever says you have autism in the film or anything like that. It's just sort of in the air.
Yeah.
And then you kind of realize, I assume this guy's got autism, which was important as well, because I felt it was important not to just ram it down people's throats. You know, it's a story first, and it just so happens.
I mean, it's also that all the different characters have got different types. I mean, obviously, having worked with people with Asperger's and things like that, you know, there's different how people react, what their different abilities are, and how you have to interact with them is different every time.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think everybody's on the spectrum at some level. It just depends where you are on the curve. So, do you know what I mean? And that's kind of part of it, you know, like everybody has issues with in life of certain circumstances, and it all depends on how far that level is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, with your brother, I mean, has he experienced, like in the film, difficulty getting a job, this kind of stuff? Is he treated like any other candidate, or accommodations made? How has he experienced that in actual fact? Well,
he does actually have a job now. He works at West Ham Football Ground as a cleaner, and he's done that for a few years now. But before that, it was impossible. He even did like a year's work experience. He is mentioned in the film, actually, because he's in the job interview scene. He says he worked in a hospital. But he did like a year's work experience, unpaid, working in a hospital, doing multiple jobs. And this was a sort of set up by his like care worker. They set that up for him, which is amazing because it did give him a lot of experience in the work environment and confidence to go into separate job interviews to get the job that he does now have. But I don't think that would be the case for a lot of people. You know, I think he lives in Newham, and Newham is exceptional as a borough in terms of supplying support for people on the spectrum. So I think he's very lucky in that sense. But yeah, he's experienced that, and his friends have experienced that quite a lot, where it feels almost you're going in for the opportunity to get a job, but really it's having that interview is seen as the opportunity in itself rather than getting a job.
Yeah, I mean, part of me asked that because my nephew's autistic, but he's basically verbal but just noises, so he's never going to get he's never going to get a job. You know, you've got that vast difference, but to the general public, autism is that whole spread of people, so it's like very difficult sometimes, I guess, to say, if you say to someone, they're autistic, that could mean many things.
Yes, 100%.
So it's a bit tricky sometimes to see how do you support that, how can you put that forward.
Yeah, I suppose it's finding the right opportunity for the right person. You know, there will be something that your nephew would be able to do with confidence, you know. It's just finding what that would be, you know. There is opportunity for people if it's provided, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you've very specifically within the film shot it to try and give the right experience or the right sense of Stephen's experience. I mean, I noticed that you were playing with ratios at various different points in the film. How did you approach that?
So basically, when we first decided to make the film, before start shooting the film, I did a little screen test with Steve just to see how he is on camera, just to get comfortable with being on camera and sort of just getting a feel of what the film would look like. Because in the film as well, we shot in Steve's actual flat, and the mum in the film and the aunt in the film is our real aunt and mum, so they're not actors either. And so we just played around with it just to get a feeling of it. And then when I started to edit it together, I made it black and white, and I was like, actually, this just feels right to me, like to have the black and white scenes. And also I added a lot of grain because I wanted to feel sort of like something from the past a bit, like a reference point for like the aesthetic was, do you remember the sitcom Royal Family?
Yeah.
So in the Royal Family, the first 2 seasons, it was shot in 4:3, and it had a sort of very almost like video look to it. It didn't feel like it was in high quality, and I wanted to create that aesthetic because I wanted it to just have a certain feeling to it. And then with the aspect ratios, the reason we shot it in 4:3, we wanted to reflect the character of Steve's life is quite boxed in. His world is quite small. And the reason it's small is because he hasn't been provided opportunity. So his horizons haven't been broadened yet. And then the reason we changed the aspect ratio when he's going to like the sort of big climax in the film is because he's heading towards opportunity to sort of prove himself. So that's why we opened it up for that moment, which looks incredible when you're watching the cinema because it really, you know what I mean? It really, it's quite a moment, which is great.
I mean, there's a film called Waves from a few years ago where they did that constantly. Right. They chopped and changed, like, depending on what was happening and who was talking. But, I mean, you've gone full on, because I thought, that isn't widescreen. That's further than that's proper, like, cinema scope almost.
Yes. Most people don't even notice it. It's interesting that you noticed it. Because the way the shot works is there's a shot of a lady walking through like a tunnel, and then it opens up there, and it sort of goes perfectly with the tunnel, and it kind of is such a smooth transition that I don't think people realize until like a minute in that it's big now, which is really it worked really well. And because it's more of a big moment in the film, it kind of turned into more of a movie rather than a film, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean it's almost wants like an orchestra swell for his heroic moment.
Yes, exactly.
So what's his reaction been to the film?
So we had a screening, like a friends and family screening in Stratford Picture House. And that was the first time he had seen any of the film. I was quite nervous, to be honest, to show it, obviously, because it's the first time people were seeing it and first time Steve was seeing it. And especially because he'd never read the script. So it was always, and we shot very out of sequence. So he probably didn't really have a clue what we was actually piecing together, you know. But his response to it has been amazing. You know, he's straight away after we did the screening, we did a little Q&A and Steve came up and was doing questions. People were taking photographs with him and everything. And he was, he's a movie star, you know what I mean? Straight away, just like, okay, this is me now. I'll answer the questions, and he's very articulate of how his responses are. And yeah, he tells everybody that he comes across, and everyone's, he's absolutely loving it. So we think have to watch him a bit, becoming a bit of a diva.
Yeah, do you think he might go on and do some other acting? Because he's definitely got a personality. He jumps off, you know what I mean? He's a very magnetic character.
I've asked him would he like to do that, and he's definitely up for it. Yeah, I think he really enjoyed the process. At first, he was obviously nervous about it. But once we'd done like the first day of filming, which we probably did like 3 scenes in the first day, he got really comfortable with it. And there was a moment which was like the proudest moment of making the film, I guess, when the big climax within the film happens. Obviously, that's not him sort of just being in his own environment at home. It's a very dramatic scene for any actor to do. And what was happening was I explained to him, okay, in this scene, you need to approach this situation where he's basically screaming at somebody. Like he's really furious, shouting at somebody, swearing. He's really like going for it. And when we was making that scene, I was literally setting up some lights, and I quickly just explained to him very briefly, this is roughly what we're going to do for the start of the night. And then as I was setting up some lights, I could hear some shouting outside where we was doing the scene. I thought, what's going on? And I looked outside, and Steve was rehearsing on his own. So he was just constantly, he must have practiced it like 10 times, not with no other actor or anything like that. He was just on his own, rehearsing it, because he knew that this is a big moment in the film and it's important to get it right. And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, I completely relaxed. My shoulders just completely dropped, because I was like, this is going to be great. You know, like I don't have to worry about this scene, which I was worried about before, because it's quite a feat to take on. And yes, I was really proud for him because he became an actor in that moment, you know?
Yeah. I mean, he definitely interacts with the actors, to use a word. There's no difference. There's definitely rapport. They've got a perfect interaction going on. So he definitely holds his own.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I mean, with the other casting, was it just a general casting process, or did you want people who specifically knew about this subject? You know, were there any issues with the casting?
No, so basically, Steve, obviously the lead, and then the mum in the film and the aunt in the film are both family members. And then all Steve's friends within the film are Steve's friends in real life, and some of them I've known for 15, 20 years as well, which was helpful because we know their strengths and weaknesses, and we're like, okay, we can just lean into some people's personalities, which was great. And then Wunmi was, like I said, just by a chance that she happened to be in town. And then a couple of the other castings was a friend of mine that I've known for many years. He's more of a stage actor. He's the guy that did the job interview, Hassan Dixon. He was in like Warhorse, the West End show and stuff. And basically just by talking to him, I was like, there's a part for you if you want to take it. And he was more than up for it. And then the girl in the film who's plays like the victim, she was a friend of his that he had worked with before, because obviously it's quite a dramatic scene, quite a traumatic scene. So he was like, oh yeah, she'll be perfect for this. So now I had a conversation with her, explain what it is, see if she was comfortable. And then she was more than happy to be involved. She asked to see if I had any scenes to show her before sort of committing to it. And I can't remember which scene I sent her now. And then she came straight back and was like, yeah, this looks great. Definitely want to be involved. And then the other cast members of actors were just on Spotlight. I put it out as just like an open audition of here's a scene of policeman or cleaner or whatever the part was. And then we had some responses with people put themselves on tape. And then from that, it's just selecting from those, which is a very fun process, because then you actually find the character there, you know? I always think it's the actors that bring the character as much as the writing, you know? Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely a great group of actors. As I said before, you can't really see the difference between trained and untrained, and how it all sort of seamlessly goes together. Like when they're in the pub, it's like, this is just a group of people, you know what I mean? It's not delineated.
Yes, 100%. That's great.
And I was going to ask you this: in your previous shorts, there's a definite strong sense of morality in all of them. Is that something you consciously have put in there? Because your previous short, Morbid Curiosity, had a moral element to it.
Yeah, I suppose it's the thing of a film needs to be two things, right? It needs to be entertaining, number one, and then it also has to leave someone with a message, I think, you know? I think the best thing about when you watch a sign of a good movie is when you come out of the cinema and you say, oh, what did you think? And then you don't just get a response, oh, yeah, it was all right. You get a response the next day when they tell someone about it, because it stuck with them for a moment, you know, or it makes them rethink the situation in their life, or how, if they was in that situation, how they would handle it, or their moral compass, you know. Morbid Curiosity touches on how entertainment is sort of profiting from serial killers, and how serial killers are sort of put on a pedestal as sort of heroes, and then companies profit from them. Is that right, you know? And we enjoy it as well. And that goes back to public executions, you know, we've always done that, got entertainment from sort of brutality, which is when you actually think about it, it's quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, interestingly, I mean, Stephen in the film calls out his friend for liking the Joker, which is always which I thought was an interesting point, because he's like, yeah, this is really cool, this character, and he's like, hang on a second,
Yeah, and that was a written line that we wrote that as, Bob, you need to say this, the Joker's the one. And the funny thing is, when we was running the scene, and then someone asked, who do you like, Bob? He was saying another character, and I was like, oh, no, Bob, you need to be the Joker in this scene, you know, because we're trying to emphasize that thing of the bad guy should be the bad guy, but normally often the bad guy is sort of like the Joker, do you know what I mean, is probably the most popular superhero character there is, and he's the bad guy. Like,
Yeah. I have a very niche question, which is probably more to do with me than a general film audience. But your whole title sequence, obviously the film's called Spectrum, referencing the autistic spectrum, but also is the ZX spectrum.
I love that you're the first person to know this. So basically, when I was writing the film, I've always been obsessed with that sort of loading sound from the ZX spectrum, because it's quite an uncomfortable feeling it gives you. Like a really like high pitched sound. So when I was writing, I was like, okay, I've always wanted to use this in a film to sort of create an emotion in the audience. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. The film spectrum is, I love like Easter eggs in movies. So it was like, okay, let's use the sound effect, the spectrum, for sort of that mindset of Steve when he's feeling a bit uncomfortable. So that was the sort of starting point. And then I looked at the loading screen of how Spectrum games used to load, and they've sort of got a sort of slowly comes up as like one line at a time in like sort of pixelated. So the way I made the title sequence was really like a geeky way to do it. Basically, what I got was a ZX Spectrum emulator for the PC, and then I had a game to load into the emulator. And then what I did is I changed the loading image from the game and replaced it with the image of Steve. So it thinks it's loading a game, but it's actually loading the image of Steve. So that was like a very sort of geeky moment of making that title sequence. But I'm very glad that somebody's noticed it.
Yeah. I was like, that's the right font. That is how it happened. Yeah. I mean, I was more Commodore 64, so I'm the other side of the playground argument of which is better. But I was like, hang on a second, this is correct. Like, this is actually.
Yeah. I'm glad that you see that as well, because I'm very into like sort of reference points like that. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, that's fine. You know. Like, so I like that you saw that. Also, like, there's another little bit as well. Like in the very first sequence, there's Steve's playing a video game. And then on the screen, it says something like, get to the crime scene. That is put in there because that is sort of bookend to the end of the film. It was like, oh, this is a nice sort of ties into him trying to be a superhero in a video game and then sort of becomes a superhero at the end, because it sort of bookends it nicely, which I quite like.
Obviously, within the autism community, they speak about autism being a superpower. Did you ever think there was an issue with, for instance, people seeing it as some kind of trick? Was there ever any thought about, oh, we need to counter this thought of it, them just being used as a commodity rather than actual people?
I think so, because they see in the film, there's a few moments when you think, oh, maybe it does have a superpower. And that was always put in as like a red herring, really, because in real life, we don't have superpowers. The superpower is sort of standing up for something, is when you become a hero in life. And that was always intentionally to be like, autistic people aren't these like Rain Man super counters necessarily or anything like that. It's just the thing of there's a red herring to sort of make that feeling of, oh, he's going to have some special ability, you know, as an autistic person. What is his special ability? I mean, can he like count cards or whatever? But no. It's nothing like that. Well, it is when he gets put into a situation, he will react. That is what a superpower is, essentially.
Yeah, it's he's got a moral centre and he's got a strong conscience rather than some special power. Yes.
I think it's because like the point of the end scene is when, because he's approaching a sort of dangerous situation, and hopefully the audience is scared of how he's going to react to that situation, and then when he reacts to it, it's a relief, you know, puts you at ease because he reacts. It's hard to say something without telling the whole story, you know.
Yeah. Definitely. Throughout the film, you've got some piano and everything else that develops and underpins it. How did that come about?
So in the film, like musically, we have sort of a running sort of motif, like a very simple sort of melodic sort of piano piece. And that sort of came as a reference point from Trent Reznor's score for The Social Network. Because when I was doing some first edits, I was playing around with different sort of musical pieces. And then when I found, like, put that to it, it was just like, there was just something that just sort of felt right. And then obviously I couldn't use that. So then in sound design, I was like, okay, look, well, this is the sort of feeling that we're trying to sort of promote here. And then throughout the film, it slowly, you probably wouldn't, no one probably really knows, but it slowly is building into something slightly else. It starts off very simple and then it becomes more and more as it goes along. And then obviously there's a big musical moment in the film as well, like a karaoke sequence with UB40's Red Wine in a pub. And that was just sort of came about really because we needed a moment of joy in the film. And to me, like, I love that sort of proper pub feeling of being in a pub. So it sort of just replicated something that I just enjoy myself, and was like, okay, this puts a smile on my face being in that sort of environment. So I'm sure it will connect with others.
Well, what is your hope for the film now? Obviously, you're doing a slightly different release. Are you doing festivals, or are you literally just doing an online? So
it's been submitted to some festivals, but obviously that process is quite a long process because obviously it takes a long time to get into the festivals by the time their entries work and everything like that. But so basically, my main thought process is just creating an audience, you know, getting people to engage with the film, people, especially people that are either on the spectrum or know someone on the spectrum, or people that are into comic books, people that are into family. Just trying to find any audience is what we're hoping for, because the reason you make a film is to get a response. So that's the main sort of port of call at the moment. And hopefully it leads on to something else. I think like every single filmmaker, when they make a film, just wants to make another one. So if it means that somebody supplies an opportunity where it means I can go out and do it again, that's the sort of win, you know, if that can happen.
So is it currently available just online right now?
Yep, so it's already just on YouTube. I literally put it out a couple of days ago. It's on YouTube, ready to go for people to watch. And yeah, hopefully people really get something out of it.
So if they go to YouTube and it's Bark Films?
Bark Films is on there, or if they go to rickstanton.co.uk/spectrum, it would also be there. And on there as well, there's some information about the film, how it was made, why it was made. Also, like, it's got some sort of technical aspects of how the film was made. It says about the budget on there, everything like that. It's sort of an open book, really. So anybody that's interested in making films also can get something out of it in terms of like the process.
So basically, the best option for you is that people to go and watch it, share it, you know, spread it around there. Because I know some of the festivals, obviously, they don't like things being online, so you have to sort of do one or the other. But equally, if people aren't going to film festivals, they're never going to see it. So
yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, I'd rather the general public watch it rather than just film fans, because I feel like it's going to speak to more people than just people that are interested in films. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's the main thing, is get an audience and just hope people enjoy it, you know, and take something out of it.
Yeah. So if anyone listening, they need to go and watch it. It's a very worthwhile film, really good. The 30 minutes will fly by before you know it. And obviously, as it's YouTube, they should like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. It's all about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, subscribe and share. Share with your friends, you know?
Yeah. Leave some comments underneath. I mean, that's going to be good feedback.
Yeah, some nice comments, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I can't imagine there'll be any negative ones. I mean, having seen it, it's like, you know, I don't know what you'd say, but yeah, there you go. Well, thanks a lot for speaking to me this morning, and wish you all the best with the film.
Thank you very much for having me.